All right. Well, welcome back, everyone, to Trail Signs. Thanks for joining us tonight. I am super excited for this episode because I get to talk to a friend of mine from back home who, as I was just saying, I think has the coolest title I've ever heard. And so this one's going to be a little different. Normally it's me talking to another backcountry YouTuber, but this time, because we're in spooky season, and spooky season is my absolute favorite thing in the world, I decided to talk to a friend of mine who is an author of spooky tales. So I'd like to welcome Jannette Quackenbush to the channel. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And I think I just said your name wrong. It's Jannette, right?
That's fine. Yes.
Okay. Just making sure. I knew I was going to do it. And I knew it is like I planted that seed in my head right from the start.
It's all right. It's all right.
Yeah. So Jannette is as the title I found, is an accomplished author, folklorist, naturalist, and ghost hunter. And again, I think that's just like the coolest combination ever. So I met Jannette through being a naturalist myself. I worked for Ohio State Parks. I worked with her husband, Pat, and we met through that. And I got to do a little bit of ghost hunting with them the short period of time that I was around there, and had an absolute blast. So, but yeah, welcome again. And let's tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. So one of my big things now is I've written about 40 books. I started out just doing the local books, which is here in the Hocking Hills. We have a lot of ghost stories and folklore that come through here. But I've been to almost 3,000 places. I've been all the way down from Louisiana up through the Appalachians, West Virginia, Tennessee, Maryland, all the way up through Ohio and into northern Ohio. All the places in my books that I write about, I go to them and research them. And I find out a lot of times that the ghost story has moved, like with the mining towns, they would move with the mining towns. A lot of mining here in Ohio and up through the Appalachians.
That is awesome. Having grown up in that area too, and I know how amazing the history and stuff out there and the cool places, and having an opportunity to go to some of those places with you guys is just awesome. So I can only imagine just the wealth of opportunities you have for like stories. And I think another thing that I didn't mention that you do is you have a podcast as well. And it's one of my favorite podcasts. It's somewhere between dusk and dawn. Is that? Did I get the title right?
Yep. You got it.
And so that's fun because I get to hear all these stories, and it's also really fun when I hear one that I'm familiar with or that we experienced together. So that's kind of like a little inside track. I'm always find those ones particularly interesting.
Yeah, I like to tell the ghost stories, from the different books, but I like to get them from all over because I have people from all over the country. So I try to get ones that are local here, and then also that outlying into West Virginia. I also do monsters and cryptids too, just because I have a lot of people that really like the monsters and cryptids, and occasionally I run into something really weird because I also like to hike a lot, and I'll go back into the backwoods and I'll find something that, like a huge cat paw that's the size of somebody's hand, that I know that's not a bobcat. And then I find out there's a folklore or legend in the area that talks about like a cougar that's been roaming the woods here and there. So, it's just kind of finding those adventures out there. It's not a lot of times just ghosts, it's cryptids and monsters and things like that. It's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's really cool when one hobby kind of opens up into another hobby and gives you those opportunities. So, of course, I have to ask, being from Ohio, have you had any encounters with the Ohio Grassman?
With the Grassman, I have not, but I have people tell me stories all the time. I have heard stories just right down the road. I have a neighbor. There was a thing for a while that the state of Ohio was dropping, and this is not true, I'm going to say it right now. They were dropping copperheads and poisonous snakes from helicopters and planes with parachutes down to certain areas to try to get them populated. Again, it wasn't true. But I had one of our neighbors from down the road come up and stand on my porch, and he just cussed me up and down and said, "You need to tell your husband," who was a naturalist at one of the parks, "you need to tell him that they need to stop that, and they need to stop it right now." So there's all sorts of folklore that goes along, and they tell me all these stories. Of course, this is the same guy. a little more credible, and believe it or not, that said something big was getting into his garbage. So I, of course, said, okay, well, is it somebody's cats? And he's like, no. I said, well, I'm sure it's not my dogs because they can't get out of the yard. We have a fence, so they keep it. And he said, it's not dogs. I said, so is it a coyote? It's not a coyote. It's bigger. And I'm like, what is bigger? Is it a bear? You might have a bear getting in there. He says, no, it's not a bear. And he said, it's not a Bigfoot. And I said, it's not a Bigfoot. No, I'm not telling you it's not a Bigfoot. It's not a Bigfoot. So we have not a Bigfoot around here that gets into the garbage too.
It's very interesting how you get a lot of those. It's not this, but it sort of might be this. Like, yep. They don't want to commit to it because everybody doesn't want to be considered that guy.
Yeah, I hear it all the time. I don't believe in ghosts, but I've got this really cool ghost story that happened to me, so I get to hear it all.
That's awesome. So, I'm just curious, how did you become interested in ghosts and all things spooky, and how did that lead to you eventually deciding to write books about it?
Okay, well, it started out really slow because, for a long time that just wasn't in my radar. And my dad was a minister in Ohio, and he would take us a lot of times. We would have to go with him to the funerals. And of course, my mom, when I was really little, she'd try to keep us busy while the funerals, this sounds really weird, was going on. But when it was done, my dad would come out and he would hide and scare us in there. And I mean, it was just one of those stories that you remember of old cemeteries that it's kind of a fond memory. So cemeteries never scared me. So I spent a lot of times, walking around in them. And then occasionally I'd have something really weird happen. I've had some things happen at Moonville where I've taken pictures. And this is an old ghost town in Ohio, Moonville is. And the only thing remaining is a couple old foundation stones. There's an old cemetery and then a huge tunnel that's allegedly haunted. It is haunted. But while in the cemetery, we saw some really strange things. So I started taking photographs and taking videos. And one day down at the tunnel, my daughter, who was at the time probably 7 or 8, was dancing around. So I opened up my video. I started recording. When I took it home, there was a man walking around in the back and there was nobody else there. And then I found out that the ghost story was of an engineer that walks around the tunnel that was killed in a train wreck there. And that kind of started the whole thing with finding the different ghost stories for the ghost towns. And then 40 books later, I'm still writing about it.
That's awesome. I love it. I love it how so many of us, we develop these passions and they oftentimes happen just almost by coincidence.
Yes.
And so, and I've also been to Moonville several times and had some weird experiences there. So can confirm. And I'm pretty sure I saw that video that you talked about. And it's one of those videos, obviously you try to be a little bit skeptical, but like, I can't figure out a way that it's anything other than what you're saying. And having known you for so many years, I know for a fact that was exactly what that was.
Well, and I'm skeptical too. So, I take it back. I see it in there. So I keep going back again and again and never see anything, never hear anything. But now I start to get more things and more things, go there. You get videos, you record. I get people talking on the recordings. We get conversations out there. So it's hard to... I'm still skeptical, but I go, okay, I'm not crazy. I'm hearing these voices. Other people are hearing these voices. So, I guess we can all be crazy together, So, yeah,
right.
It's kind of an experience. And again, I do believe in ghosts, but I'm always skeptical.
And I know you also lead trips down like Moonville and a couple other places, like ghost hunting, trips that people can join in on. I would imagine it's a lot of fun to see some of these people come in. They're probably a little bit skeptical. I'm sure you have some people that are ready to be scared and everything, but I bet it's so much fun watching them have those experiences and just seeing their whole world just go, turns on and they're just having a blast. I would imagine that's a pretty cool experience.
It is. 95% of the people that I
He froze up there.
We walk about 1.5 miles out and it's dark and they have not ever been in the dark before. Out come the lanterns, the lights, the headgear, all of that kind of stuff. It is so cool to see them. And I make them turn the lights out after a while. and then we turn them back on.
Yeah, that's got to be a lot of fun.
It is.
I've taken newbies back into places like that before, and yeah, it's always fun to see the different reactions they have.
It's mind-blowing for a lot of people. And then I have a lot of people that are really skeptical until they walk out of there. I have people that come back week after week trying to find more information because they've gotten that bug then.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those subject matters, I think, that really kind of burrows into you, especially after you've had an experience that you can't quite capture. And so along those lines, what do you think it is about ghosts and ghost stories that resonates with so many people?
I just think it's the mystery and the adventure. I mean, at least for me, that's what it is. It's something that we don't know about, and it's fun to find proof of any kind of mystery or adventure that we don't know about. I mean, it's the unknown. It's just like settling the West at one time. People didn't know what was out there, and they wanted to know. They wanted to find out what it was, and I think that it's one of the few things left that we're trying to figure out what it is. And once you get a little bite, if you have a ghost, something ghostly happen, it's like, okay, I'm ready to go another step and see if I can find more. I mean, it's just that. It's the mystery. It's the adventure. It's the exploring, the discovery.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it plays even more of a part now because, as we progress as a species and learn more and more, there's less out there that's like, especially, anymore, you just Google something and it's there. But, I think that's why, like you said, I enjoy it because it's that sense of mystery. And I think that's something that is really important for our psyche. I think humans are kind of drawn to that unknown. Like you said, we wouldn't be explorers and stuff like that if we weren't, just inherently curious.
Yeah.
And so
I don't force people to believe, but I just say when you go on these hikes, have an open mind. Just because you don't know there's owls out there and you hear one, you might just run into a ghost in the same thing. You just don't know.
Oh, absolutely. When I was a naturalist, I was out doing an owl program, and although I'm not nearly as good as Pat with my owl calls, I had some relative success, and I remember being out with a group and it was trying to call in a barred owl and was having some success, and all of a sudden I heard this noise, and everybody was like, "Wow, that was cool. Was that an owl?" And I was like, "Nope." What was it? I don't know.
Well, they're never going to do it on call. You can call one all night, and as soon as you get in your car, you roll down your window and you're going to hear those owls calling. I guarantee, because you can't make them hoot.
No. Nature will always make you look like, you're like, yeah, no, I'm done this many times before. And then sure as soon as you have an audience, they're like, nope.
That's like any backpacking trip. As soon as you pack your bag, here comes the storms,
Yeah, I had a barred owl that would just outside of my office, and of course, usually I would leave my park pretty late at night, and so yeah, he usually would chat. He wouldn't talk to me when I was trying to talk to him, but he always liked to talk to me when I was getting ready to leave.
Of course not. Yep.
So, well, cool. So you alluded to it earlier, that you've kind of gone all over the place. And I was going to say, you're being based in Appalachian region of Ohio, which is in itself a really cool spot and full of lots of great history, especially with like the, Black Diamond towns and everything, from the coal mining experience and stuff. What all places have you? I guess you don't have to list all of them, but what are some of the coolest places that you visited?
Oh my goodness. One of my favorite places is in the Shenandoah Valley. The George Corbin cabin. I had heard it was haunted. Now, it's only a mile and a half down to the cabin. But it's a mountain. So you're going straight down a mountain on an old trail, before they had roads, before they had anything like that. So it's straight down. It's a mile and a half, a really hard trail. So I decided to backpack it in, and I packed, everything but a solar panel my first time backpacking in like the idiot I was.
Been there.
I went down there. It's probably been 4 years, and I went down there and I said, I want to backpack by myself. I want to be scared. I want the adventure, you know, I want the whole thing. So I backpacked down. Got started late because it was kind of snowy out, and it was in November, which for you guys isn't a big deal. But for us in Ohio, we have to relearn how to drive in the snow again. So I get down there and it's kind of snowy. So I hike in. It's late at night. You have to cross this, what they call a river, but it's actually just a big creek. It's maybe waist deep, but if you're lucky, you can hop from stone to stone. So I get over there and I get to the cabin and it's night. So I'm like, I'm going to go to sleep. It's bedtime. I am tired. I hiked it in. I'll go and explore in the morning. So I get everything unpacked. I actually laid down in the kitchen because I couldn't see anything else in there. Even with the flashlight, I didn't want to go look. And so I had everything in there. I got a fire started in this little pot-bellied stove. I started it, just laid down, and I'm just about to sleep. And I hear this voice say, "Nee, I think we've got company." And I was sitting, you know, just with my face out of my sleeping bag. It was so cold. And I thought, oh my God, I'm in the wrong cabin. So I shot up and I'm like, I am so sorry. You know, I'm in here. It was dark. Nobody answers. So I get up out of my sleeping bag. I go all over the place. There was absolutely, I locked the doors. There was absolutely nobody in there. I went outside, nothing out there, you know, nobody out there. I didn't want to go too far because there's bear down there. And I had a couple on the way in. So I went back. I'm not really shook up, but I'm like excited. I'm like, you know, a little bit nervous. So I went back in, lay back down, made sure everything was, it was about an hour later. I fell asleep and I hear this, "Ma'am," shot back up. Nobody's there. The fire's out. So I stoke up the fire, started again. It's like, I would say about 20 degrees, and it's down the valley. It may have been colder than that. It was freezing in there. Every hour on the hour, I was awakened by a ma'am because my fire went out. So the only thing I can think of, it's called the George Corbin Cabin, part of the Smoky Mountains. It's a cabin that they rent out. The only thing I can think of is it was George Corbin. So later on, I had listened and found some tapes that they had taped him talking about the cabin in the area. His voice matched perfectly with the voice that had told me and had awakened me all night to start the fire. So it was one of the weirdest experiences that I've had. But I've been to a lot of different places, Smoky Mountains, all different kind of places. Never had an event like that, though.
That is wild. That is right out of like a 90s TV show about ghost hunting. You're like, that didn't happen. That's crazy. You know, but I will say this though, it is good to know that good Southern hospitality still exists past death.
Yeah, right. But you know, I wasn't gonna. If they kicked me out, I would have sat on that porch because there was no way that I was going to walk that 1.5 miles out in that cold. And the leaves had covered the ground, so I couldn't see the trail. And I was just thinking, it's going to be a cold night out on this porch. And I said, okay, they'll either kick me out or not. They'll throw me out.
Wow. Yeah. You know, sometimes the things that go bump in the night in the normal forest can be a little bit more freaky than some of those ghosts out there.
Yeah, and your listeners are going to think I'm crazy for that, but I'm telling you, I'm spot on that one. If they want to have an experience, George Corbin Cabin. Yeah. So amazing. Have you had any ghostly experiences?
You know, I have. I can't think of anything. You know, I always get that what's my scariest thing that's happened out here, and it usually almost exclusively involves moose. But because I haven't really I will say though,
you can't pat those things, can you?
No, those things are, yeah. And everybody's like, oh, but what about the grizzlies? I'm like, I don't worry about the grizzlies. I never see them. Moose, on the other hand, those things are terrifying.
They are.
But you know, out here, I had one incident actually in the apartment that I live in, and I've only ever had one experience, but I had a cap that was on a jug up in the top of my closet, and this cap was completely screwed on, and it just shot out of the closet and pretty much almost to the other side of the room. And so obviously it shouldn't go out first.
No.
And you couldn't unscrew it.
Right.
It would hit the ceiling. So like you couldn't unscrew it by itself. So like you would have had to push the jug over to get it off. But again, that's the only thing that's ever happened here. You know, in Moonville, we did do some ghost hunting out at Moonville, and we were actually outside of the tunnel over by where the trestle used to be.
Okay.
And I was a little bit ahead of the group because this is kind of how I am. And one of them said something, and I turned around to look at them. And at that moment, a shadow went between us. And I knew they saw it too, because all of us had that same look on our face, which was kind of like, and like, you know, we're staring at each other and like, did you see that? Yeah. Did you see that? Yeah. Uh-huh. And then when we went back to listen to some of our recordings and stuff, we actually had a recording of a little girl's voice very clearly say, "I see you."
You're kidding me. Well, there was a girl that was killed. She fell off the trestle there. There's a trestle there again now. The Rail Trail, Moonville Rail Trail Association has like 13 trestles along there. They're getting
Wow.
ready to put the last few in 2025. But yes, it's that kind of stuff happens all the way to Mineral now. You can go, it's about 3.7 miles. You can hike that whole trail and weird things happen all up and down through that trail. So it does not surprise me that
Yeah.
you had that experience there.
Yeah. We also had a voice from inside the tunnel. Again, it was an EVP that we got, and it said, "It's cold in there." So again, kind of an intelligent, like, so you know, those are some interesting ones. And then probably the most intense one that I had, and this was before I worked for Ohio State Parks. This is back when I was still a firefighter, and I was volunteering for a park, county park system there.
Right.
And we had a nature center, and the nature center was an old um old farmhouse. It had
Okay.
been converted, and none of us liked the basement. Like the basement just had that feel. Like it was that classic, like, you know, hand dug, like, you know, you only went down there if you actually had to. And you know, they'd always said, "Oh yeah," we'd always joked about the ghosts in the basement.
Well, when you dig underground, you're on the same level as everybody that's dead, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so one day I was in there, and they had all gone out to do other programs, and they asked me if I would stay behind and do a bird count, because we were doing the annual bird count, and so we needed to do some recording. We had a big, you know, bird observatory on the back porch, and so I was doing that, and so I was there by myself, and I started hearing some footsteps in the basement. Now, before this, I wasn't really much into ghosts, so it didn't immediately go there, other than the joking part of it. But I thought that it was my friend and fellow naturalist, Francis, had snuck into the building. And so, me being the jerk that I am, I was like, "Well, I'm going to go scare her."
Oh no.
so, so I walked down the hallway, and as I'm walking down the hallway, and it's one of those hallways that kind of goes towards the front of the house, and the steps of the basement kind of were alongside, and there was a doorway, so it was like a 90-degree angle. And so I was coming down the hallway towards this 90-degree angle, and I could hear steps going up the steps, you know, wooden steps.
Oh my gosh.
And as I got to the edge, the corner, I'm leaning over slowly because I want to make, you know, a good scare. And I saw the doorknob turn, heard the door unlatch, the door swings open, the door swings closed, and then the footsteps continued down the hallway into the kitchen. But there was
Oh my
no
God, that's how every horror story starts out. I can't believe you weren't murdered.
yeah, I know. I was like, so I, you know, was like, huh. My skepticism basically just started to disappear at that moment in time. And I went back into the porch area, which is glassed in, and finished my bird count. And when Francis and Mel eventually came back, I told them, "Thanks, that was a cool experience. I will never be here by myself again."
That is a really cool experience. I mean, like some people live to have an experience like that. That
Yeah,
is amazing.
and like I said, you know, I think that's the amazing thing about this speed. You know, a lot of people are very open-minded, but I would say the vast majority of us that have done it have had some sort of experience that kind
Yes.
of like catalyzed that for us, and that was a big one.
Nobody
So
believes in ghosts till something them. Or I go to so many places, eventually stuff happens to me. And it's just, I've heard I was at New River and I was walking along this old rail trail. It's used a lot. But I heard a baby crying and I kept hearing a baby crying, that wow, wow, wow that newborns have. Well, I thought it might be a unique bird. So I walked over towards the river because it paralleled the river. I walked over and came up on this old, it's on kind of an island. Typically it's on an island, but if there's not a lot of water and the water's not up, you can walk over there, through a marshy area. I came across it, and it was a cemetery over there with lots and lots of course, baby graves. Never did find a bird to match it. So the only thing I can say is when I got over there, it stopped about that time. It was so weird.
It's amazing how things like a baby crying or a baby laughing is one of the most, benign sounds in the world until there's no baby there to deliver it.
Right.
And then it becomes the scariest thing on the planet.
Yes. Yep. I mean, it takes all the senses sometimes with ghosts and trying to figure out. And that's where one of my things is that I talk about. It's where the natural and the supernatural collide. I try to figure out what's naturally causing it to get to the supernatural. If it's nothing natural, then I start looking at the supernatural. If it's not an owl, if it's not a fox or a coyote calling, or those bear footprints are too big to be bear footprints, that's when it becomes something that's unnatural. And that's the cool part, having a naturalist background. And you'll know this from experience, that if we don't know something, we want to figure out what it is.
Oh yeah. That's I think probably what makes you as a ghost hunter so much more prepared for it, because I think people who become naturalists are inherently curious, and we just want to know what's going on and what's going on around us. And you run through those litany of things that you're like, well, it could have been this, it could have been that, maybe it was this. I've heard really weird noises come from bobcats, and I've heard really weird noises come from various things, but no, it's not always those either. So.
It isn't. It is not. And that, again, that's the fun part of exploring new areas and finding new places. Most of mine now have gone to, I've got a couple different of the ghost hiking books that people can hike in, like on the Appalachian Trail and some of the other areas, because now exploring those ghostly places, there's so many people now. Those are the places left where you can actually go and there's not tons of people. If you like to hike in and hike out. And those are the kind of places that I've found that I like. I want to write about places that I like, that makes sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I love that you tie those in together, because, you almost use the ghost thing as kind of a door to get people in. But once they get out there and teach them a little bit about the things that they're experiencing, and, any way we can get people to, like the natural world and maybe take care of it, I think is an important thing. So it's cool that you're able to kind of combine those.
That's it. I entice them in with ghosts and teach them history. Most people don't know that. You can pick that up. Being here you are, I can tell.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, the history is what makes it so interesting to me, I think. And that's part of the reason why, I really enjoy it too, is because anytime we would go to a place to look, the first thing you do is you try to learn the history of it. And for me, that was just fascinating.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I finally learned to write the story first, and then I go into the place, because a lot of times I come back and then I have to completely change the story around, which is good, but I don't know what I'm looking for until I write the story. And then I go in there and find out, oh, there's a cemetery back there. And then it's like a whole new story that comes out of it. So, it's a lot of different, again, exploring and checking it out. And then, yep.
That's awesome. So I think you said earlier you've written 40 books. That's
yes.
Amazing. And they're not all ghost books, I'm assuming.
No, most of them are tied into that. Now I do Hocking Hills hiking trails, and I've also got Ohio hiking trails, where I talk about some of the different places that people can go that are a little more out there. The Arc of Appalachian and some of these newer parks and preserves that are opening that people can actually visit and go, that have nothing to do with ghosts. Although a lot of times I'll put the legends in there because people like to go and know a little bit about the histories and legends with them, but don't take that too far on the hiking books. So
fair enough.
Yep.
There's always room for spooky. There will
Yes.
always be room for spooky.
There you are.
All right. So the last couple questions I have are probably standard questions, I would imagine, but I think they're the fun ones.
Sure.
So what is the scariest ghost activity that you have personally witnessed, if you haven't already shared it?
Well, anytime I go to Moonville and I take people out there, and I have some groups that are really into it and they're really shy. And then all of a sudden we'll start, and we use these, what these are called little spirit boxes, where the radio waves, we put them in reverse and we're supposed to hear things through the radio waves. Then I take out my camera and I'll take pictures while they're doing it. And we try to do dowsing rods and a lot of different tools at the same time. So if one thing's working, we're hoping to get other things to kind of prove that, yes, there's something going on. Occasionally with the EMF detectors, which are the little boxes that light up when they pick up the energy, the electromagnetic field, we'll have those come on. And I'll have people that are really shy and they won't ask questions. And all of a sudden, and the EMF detectors will go off. Then the ghost boxes, the spirit boxes, people will start talking. We had a couple weekends ago where I had a group out there, and it was just a normal hike. And it was literally having a conversation back and forth with one of the hikers on there. And it starts freaking people out, and they start trying to throw these things at other people because I'm actually talking to a ghost, because they will ask questions and they will answer it. You know, a lot of times words will come through on those with the radio waves and they're not right. But then when you get a conversation, it is freaky.
Wow.
And you probably remember the Moonville bully, the Baldy Keaton story, where he throws pebbles at people from the top of the tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
We have gotten, and you may have been on that group where we got the stones thrown at us.
Yep.
I thought you were at that ghost hunt. Yes. We have that happen almost regularly now, where we know nobody else is up there and the pebbles will come and ask questions. And yes. So those become really spooky for me when I see my group interacting, and it's strange and spooky still for me.
That's cool. That's awesome that you can do it for that long and still have, it's you never, or I don't think you ever get completely used to it. And those pebbles, that is definitely a freaky experience when it happens, because that particular area, there's no way you could get up there without somebody noticing.
And there's no cell phone service. There's no electric up there anymore. There's nothing. I mean, we're pretty deep down into probably 2 or 3, I don't know. It's a 15 or 20 minute drive to the closest town where you can get cell phone service. So it's hard to get any kind of, we can get a little bit of cell phone service, but you can't get the stuff that we get out there. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. I do remember one time though, we were out there, and this was before they put the trestle back in. And we were up on there and we were looking down in the direction of the trestle, and all of a sudden we saw a really bright light with a little red light next to it. And of course, a lot of people think that was like the train and the brakeman. And of course we were like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And then we just realized that's where the Rangers park and then shine their light down to see if anybody's out there.
Well, now you can go out there 24/7. You are allowed
really?
on the rail trail 24/7, not in forestry on either side.
Sure.
But you can go out there and hike that trail all night long if you want to. There are some weird things that go on there.
I'm sure.
So.
Well, and I do want to make sure that I mentioned we weren't breaking any rules, because I think at the time you could be out there up to an hour and a half after sunset, which we were watching that time very surely, but I'm sure he was as well. But we just thought that was funny that was the Ranger kind of checking us out.
Right.
Of these guys out there again. So out of all the stories that you have written about, do you have a favorite ghost story?
Probably the Moonville bully that used to beat everybody up. And then one day he tried to go into a bar. He was also the town drunk and the town tax collector. And one day he decided to go into a bar, and this is in Hope Furnace Station. He decided to walk into the bar, and the bar owner said, no, you're not going to tear it up tonight. So they kicked him out, and he never made it home. And most of the people believe that Baldy Keaton, and that was the bully, was murdered, although the coroner said he was hit by a train, and that is the ghost that throws pebbles. And that's probably one of the scariest ones, because we do have that happen a lot.
Yeah. it is wild that you have so many of these stories that can be backed up by, you know, historical record, and I know that's
Yes.
one of them. And then
And
of
these
course,
were all passed down from people that lived in the area by Bill Price was the first naturalist in Ohio, and he went around collected the stories before they tore the houses down.
wow, that's awesome that he was able to do that. All right, and then last, what was the scariest ghost story that you researched?
The scariest, that would be Murder or Axtell Ridge, where a couple by the name of Stout were murdered by his son, each in a different area, one at the house. You can walk down in the Vinton County or the Vinton Experimental Station. The trail's not there anymore, but you can kind of see it, but you can hike down in there. It was always said that they would hear voices coming from the well down there where the son dumped the dad's body, the stout man's body. He pushed him down in the well. Well, I went hiking down there and I lose you there.
No.
Oh, okay. I went hiking down there one day and I heard growls coming from the well, and it had an awful smell like a dead body coming from it. When I went to return, I get lost in a bucket. I put up these little orange tape to find my way down and find my way back. As I walked up, each of those little pieces of tape went flying off the tree limbs I had stuck them on. There's some strange things. That is the scariest place, and I don't want to go back there again.
Yeah, that sounds pretty wild. So, hold on just a moment. There's some weird, like, audio.
I can hear that
going on. I don't know if it's me or you.
It might be me.
That's okay. Maybe it's a ghost that's
it is. They didn't want me to tell that story. I'm telling you.
There, you know, there's might be something to that. So anyways, yeah, I think that's all the questions I have. Is there anything else you wanted to throw out there at all, or?
No, I just, tell your people when you're out there hiking, if you ever find anything, let me know. Any ghost stories. I just love remote hiking ghost stories. Go out there and find that scary place.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely have to put your email address or something into the show notes there.
It's loneghostwriter@gmail.com.
Awesome. And so where can people get your books if they wanted to pick up one of your books?
You can find them on Amazon, online, and Barnes & Noble. Some gift shops, probably more locally, but on Amazon, you can find them. You can just look them up by my name, Jannette Quackenbush.
Awesome. And if any of you out there want to buy the books and they want to have a fun game with it, there is one book that there is a picture of me in, dressed as a Civil War soldier. I don't remember which one it was, but it'll be a fun way to find it out. So just buy all of them, and you'll get a picture of me if you really want to. And then lastly, remind us what your podcast name is.
I have Sometime Between Dusk and Dawn Ghost Stories. I also have a YouTube channel, a Lone Ghost Writer.
All right, I will have to check that out because I didn't know you had a YouTube channel. So
I do.
Awesome. Cool. So you're in the family then. You're in the YouTube family.
I am.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much. This has been absolutely a blast, and I've really enjoyed it. And I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your spooky stories with us.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
All right. Everybody have a great night. And as always, keep hiking on.
Night.